Hi, everybody. It's David Dorian Ross here, founder of the Virtual Pipe Club, and this is the Virtual Pipe Club on YouTube. Typically, on Saturdays, I live stream our Virtual Pipe Club meetings directly to YouTube so that people can watch them even if they can't attend the meetings if they're not at home, or if you can watch it later in time. But today, as you can bet on sometimes, we had some technical difficulties and we weren't able to get the stream to run onto YouTube. So we recorded it, and what you're going to watch in just a second here is the recording of our Virtual Pipe Club meeting. It was really awesome. We had Jeremy Reeves, the head tobacco blender from Cornell and Diehl, as our guest speaker. It was a nice, pretty average sized group, about 30 guys from all over the world who attended, asked lots of great questions. Anyway, enough talking. Jump right in and enjoy. Which means that I'm going to do this thing here just to give it a little officialness. Hello and good morning, good Saturday afternoon, good evening. Tell you a little story. Speaking of ex-girlfriends, I had a girlfriend once who got a job at a call center when we were in college, and she had a script that was pasted right to the top of her desk, and it had the whole script, and at the beginning of the script it had GMGAGE. And so for like a month, she kept saying, Gimgagi, how are you today? And then somebody told her, no, that means good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So anyway, wherever you may be in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the weekly edition of the Virtual Pipe Club. I am in no official capacity whatsoever, but I'm David Dorian Ross, and here is the rest of the crew. I'm sorry that this week we're not able to live stream because whatever, but this is being recorded and we'll put it up there. And here is the miracle of the 21st century when it comes to live streaming or recording classes or seeing things on YouTube, that you can make comments whenever you want to, and it will be as if it was happening in real time. I'll pass along your questions to Jeremy and anybody else in the crew, and you can talk to each other and all that kind of groovy stuff. So don't be shy and be a part of the conversation. And having said that, you guys want to talk about pipes and tobacco and smoking and all that kind of good stuff today?
Yeah, that sounds
Josh is
good.
going, yes, that's why I'm here, dude. He's like, this isn't the knitting circle. Somebody may disagree. Anyway, I will start with that humble bragging thing that we always do. Today I have my Joby, one of two. Joby, there's a name. Dimitri, do you know what style this is?
That's actually hard to tell.
It has
something. Yeah, it's not quite freehand. It's kind of.
There's a style name for this Joby. Anyway, inside, I've been smoking a lot of the other tobacco companies' blends that I just realized maybe it would be. No, I've been smoking a lot of Mac Barons, as you know, and getting a lot of that HH line. But today I just felt like maybe a little Molto Dolce would be nice. And so that's what I got in here.
Very nice.
Who else wants to yeah, John.
Okay.
John, by the way, I'm going to show you something in a second here. John Torfey, go for it, dude.
Yes, I've got, I'm smoking my brand new Brothers by Briar from Mike Cook. I just got it yesterday with Camper.
Wow.
And it smokes awesome. It's a Rhodesian. And I'm smoking some Dunhill 3-year mature. But I figured this is going to be a long meeting, so I got 3 pipes out here today. I got this one. I got my Peterson with some Cornell and Diehl bijou, and I also have a Favinelli with some Robert McConnell's Code Relax in it.
Nice.
Set up well.
Okay. I have 3 Danish pipes today with me. Now I'm smoking Larsen, old one. I have this beautiful Eric Norden pipe and this Stanwell. This Stanwell is probably from early 70s. And I'm smoking one of my blends. That was my first blend 414. It's McClellan 5120 Fragrant Virginia, Izmir from Cornell and Diehl, Latakia from Cornell and Diehl, and Granulated Perique from Cornell and Diehl. Actually, I use Cornell and Diehl as my blending tobaccos more than anything else. There are amazing blending tobaccos from Cornell and Diehl. Also, I like Burley from Lane Limited. They have delicious Burley. It's one of very few Burleys that I can smoke straight and enjoy it.
Very cool.
Very
and
cool.
I'm drinking this semi-sweet Georgian wine.
Sounds delicious.
Fantastic.
David,
Yes.
I have the old and the new tonight. The old, first of all, is this clay pipe, which I posted a few weeks back, which actually, I don't know if you probably won't can see it in this light, but it's embossed with the motif Auld Lang Sein.
I do see that.
And
It's
yeah,
showing up.
and 2 hands shaking in friendship, which I think really just symbolizes what you have created with this whole group. I think it's fantastic. Now, the inspiration for this pipe, which dates somewhere between 1850 and 1900, and is just about smokable. I've got some HH Old Dark Fired in here today. The inspiration for this pipe comes from Robert Burns, the bard, who stayed not too far from here and just wrote some of the most beautiful poetry in the world, including a song called Auld Lang Sein. Now, I'm sure many of you will have heard of the song and in fact will have sung it at New Year most probably. But it's the sentiment of the song, I think, that's important. And if I may, if you'll indulge me, David, because I know you like your poetry, the first verse, the whole poem is about the question of friendship. How important is friendship? And the first verse asks the question, should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and Auld Lang Syne? In other words, should friendships be treasured and old times be remembered? Well, of course they should. And there's another verse there. The song has several verses, but the most important one for me is, and it relates directly to this pipe and what it represents, is, here's a friend, here's a hand, my trusted fear, which is trusted friend. A hand of mine, and gi's a hand o' thine. In other words, give me your hand in friendship. We'll tack a good old Willie Watt. Is a ale. Think of Auld Lang Syne. Okay, it's all about friendship, and I think this pipe for me just epitomizes what this group is all about. So that's the old. The new is my near-up classic, which came last week, and I'm still breaking in. I've got some Comoy's Cornish mixture in this one. That's for later on. Very chocolatey. Still kind of getting used to that one. So there we are. That's my old and my new for today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for the poetry. And
Yes.
I have enough Scots in my background. We talked about that before, I think once. So
Yeah.
I love Robert Burns. Would the
He's also one of my favorite poets.
Other seers. Yes.
A man's a man for all that.
Awesome. Who else wants to throw something up there? Yeah, Todd, go for it, my brother.
Got a little Carolina Red Flake going on here. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm airing it out, and then I'm gonna, it's still July, so I'm doing the clays.
Okay, you guys have got me thinking I need to pull out my clay there to join the crew.
I am actually not smoking today. The heat index is about 98 degrees, and I just shut down in this heat. And I don't have air conditioning, so that's that.
That's all right.
Where is
Did you
that,
at
John?
least bring a beverage, John?
Yeah, I got some Gatorade.
It's a Gatorade.
John, where are you at?
I'm in southern Missouri.
So you're not, as the crow flies, terribly far from where Jeremy's at.
A ways still, South Carolina,
Yeah,
Conway, South Carolina.
I'm on the other side of the planet. Just, I'm in California.
Right.
So
How close is that to Charleston?
We're about a 2.5 hour drive.
Okay. Inland, I assume?
Sorry?
Inland, I assume?
Only a little bit. I mean, we're basically right on the ocean. I'm about a 20-minute drive from Myrtle Beach.
Probably driven through there, but it's been a lot of years, which is why I don't remember it.
Gotcha. Are you in Charleston now?
No, I'm all the way out in Arizona now, but I was stationed in Charleston in the late 80s.
Gotcha.
Me and some buddies off my ship took our bikes up to Myrtle Beach for spring break one year.
Terry, you got a new background there, bro.
Yeah, it's a picture my mom took of where they're camping. I like it.
That's nice.
That's about 5,000 times more water in that picture behind you than actually exists in Arizona.
Probably. Now we got some pretty big lakes, so you can't get.
No, I suppose that's true.
Fires.
Suppose that's true. I grew up in New Mexico, and yeah, people have this same sort of idea that it's all just red rocks and desert, and they don't realize that there are mountains and hills and elk and fishing and all those things. And I know that's there in Arizona too. But what part of Arizona are you in?
I live in East Mesa. It's in the Phoenix metro area.
Yeah, my uncle lives in Mesa.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. We're on the border of Mesa and Apache Junction, so.
Yeah, been there a few times. Know it well.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm in Houston, Texas. The heat index is about 105 right now. Now, I cannot beat the dry heat of Arizona, but it's nice and humid over here, so we get to sweat as we walk to take our trash out in the morning. But like I said, we don't have the dry heat of Arizona, but hey, hot's hot.
That's true. I'd rather burn than boil personally, but I live in a very humid place too. It's about 85% humidity right now.
Right. Yeah, I'd rather have my skin boil off than burn off, I think.
I prefer the dry heat, but even I have to admit, it doesn't matter how dry it is. Once you hit 110, it's just hot.
Yeah.
It's just hot. It's just.
I've ridden a motorcycle in that. It's not fun.
110?
Hey, Tim, I haven't seen you in a while, sir. How are you?
Oh, I've been here. I've been here almost.
Tim Hummer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong Tim.
We have multiple Tims.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad.
My bad.
Yeah, I was occupied the last couple of meetings and didn't get a chance to stick my face in, but I thought of all of you.
We missed you, and we talked about you behind your back, just so you know.
Well, good. At least somebody's paying attention to me.
I do that all the time. I talk about people behind their backs quite often. I just think it's polite to let them know. That's all.
I appreciate that.
No, it's good to see you. It's good to see you. What are you smoking today?
I'm not sure what this pipe is. It says Pipe Superior on it, and I've got some Briarworks Peach Cobbler in it.
Very nice.
This is a very
nice smoking pipe. It's heavy. It's not one you can clench.
Wow. Hold that up one more time, would you? I just got it. That's a chunky little bad boy right there.
Yes, it is.
Very cool.
Looks nice.
I see
I enjoy it.
A few new faces. Is anybody first time? This time? Darren, good to see you. Nick?
I'm a first timer.
Hear me?
Josh, was that you said first timer?
Yeah, I've seen some of your videos, and you obviously have some pretty prestigious guests. So, Jeremy, thanks for doing this. It's fun to come in, and I got my son out here with me, and I've got a little Star of the East going in my bone stubby pot. So.
Oh, very cool. Thanks. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, I want to welcome the guys who are just showing up for the first time. Occasionally, I'll do this whole rules thing, which is not really rules. Basic rules is don't be a dick. You know, just like I think, and we've never had a problem with that. We've never had anybody be obnoxious.
You can kick me out now. That's
no,
fine.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to see you when you were here, so that's good. Yeah. I think that this is just a wonderful, wonderful group, and I'm really feeling fortunate to be able to meet everybody here. So that's our basic only rule. Ask any question that you want. Come when you can, leave when you want to, and that's about it. And I just really appreciate everybody who shows up and does like Phil says, you know, extend a hand, make some friends from different parts of the world. And so anyway, just as a moment of welcome and orientation, that's the whole 9 yards. Yeah, Tim Heineck, what do you got there, brother?
Well, I've got some Cornell and Diehl opening night. Thanks, Jeremy. And I'm smoking it in a Peterson Sherlock Holmes Watson. I did a
nice.
on building my 7-day set. I have the rack. I have about 4 of the collection. And the thing about this particular pipe occurred with a trade I did with a member of our group here. And it led to, later on after doing the trade, exchanging our pipes, led to a video chat for about 3 hours about pipes and tobacco. And once again, it just speaks to, you know, how pipes and tobacco can bond people so well and create a friendship in very little time. So wonderful experience. And, you know, I'm really excited to, you know, chasing down the rest of the pipes to make up the Sherlock Holmes 7-day set. But, you know, I'm trying to make every one of them be special, you know, maybe a pipe that has a story behind it or I acquire from somebody I know. So I want to make the set kind of special. So that's my spiel for today.
That's nice, man. Somebody else was talking about having a Sherlock Holmes set that they put together.
Yeah, that was Peter.
That was Peter. I thought maybe, now where'd he go?
Yep. I don't know.
There you are.
Maybe I'll highlight or something. Yeah, I've got that. And I mean, if that's all I had, I'd be pretty happy. There's a nice variety of shapes and they all smoke great. So I really like them a lot. Hey, I've got a question for people who probably know a lot more about pipes than I do. This thing here, see that? I don't know if you can see mother of pearl, wrapped with like woven wire, like in this grooves. It's like this crazy. It's a William Demuth company. It's really big. I mean, it's like 12 inches at least.
Where did you find that? Where did you come across that?
I don't know. I got it on eBay many years ago, and I've hardly ever smoked it. I mean, it's in really nice shape, and I'm just trying it out now with some early morning pipe, and it's smoking great. It's a clunk. I mean, it's heavy and it's not a clincher. I don't do that anyway, but it's real nice. So I don't know if anybody knows anything about this kind of thing. I don't even know if it's really briar. I'm not 100% sure. So kind of crazy. I've never seen mother of pearl inlay in a pipe like that.
The only maker that I've ever been aware of that did mother of pearl inlay was Michael Parks in Canada. His logo is a mother of pearl insignia that he actually does the inlay on the stem, at the base of the stem. I've not seen mother of pearl inlay on the briar before. That's really neat. That's a cool piece.
This is old too. I mean, this could be 100 years old or something. It's I don't know. I don't know anything about it other than it's stamped WDC, William Demuth.
Oh, WDC. That's Wellington, isn't it? Isn't that?
I think it's, I just Googled it. I think it's William Demuth Company. And I don't know anything. They're just, I mean, it's not something that's been around for a long time, but it's a nice pipe, I guess. It's kind of fun. So thank you. Good to see everyone.
This one doesn't have the logo on it, but here's a Wellington. And I thought that their logo is also WDC. But as you know, I know zero about pipes and whatnot. Hey, just in case people are new to the Zoom thing, the couple of different controls that you have, I'm going to, when I get Jeremy introduced, I'm going to put him on spotlight view, which means that it's going to like take over your screens and then you'll just be able to see him. But you can get out of it really easily. Like if you want to see the rest of the group or, you know, search around for somebody else to talk to, by clicking the gallery view little button up in your upper right-hand corner. So it's really easy to get out of that and see it differently. Also, if you're on a mobile device, phone or whatnot, there's a finger swipe that you can go through and you can see different groupings of the guys who are here. And that's just something that might be helpful to get more viewing pleasure, as we say.
Hey, just another quick comment about this pipe, just because I don't know anything about it. It's got that logo on it that it's in that triangular shape, WDC.
Yes, WDC. That's the Wellington. So I guess maybe
it says William Demuth in the picture.
I think that was.
So maybe they're related or something.
Maybe they're related. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know much about it, but thank you and good to see everyone.
Yes. Well, on that note, let me introduce our guest speaker for the week. I couldn't be more delighted. Well, I could be, but only by a margin. To introduce somebody that I just fanboy over because I see him on YouTube and whatnot, and I smoke a whole bunch of the stuff that he puts together. I'm sure a bunch of you guys do too. Jeremy Reeves is the head tobacco blender for Cornell and Diehl. And he, as he said, is from New Mexico originally and by various routes found his way down to South Carolina and is working at Cornell and Diehl there as part of Laudisi Enterprises. And I'm hoping that he'll tell us all kinds of inside stories about some of his small batch work, among other things. And I tried to get him to maybe bring some samples of some of the leaves down from the factory. So I don't know what he's got with him today, but again, for the guys who are new, I'm going to back out of here and let you guys ask all the questions that you want to. But first, let me see if we can just get Jeremy to come on and tell us his life story. So welcome to Jeremy.
Thank you so much. Everybody hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Good. Yep. Okay, good. So yeah, I guess I'll try and do the background as briefly as I can. As David Dorian mentioned, I definitely took a rather circuitous route to come to being in the position that I am at Cornell and Diehl. Grew up in New Mexico, moved to Chicago, met one of my best friends of my entire life on that first trip to Chicago. He and I ended up kind of moving around all over the country over the next several years together. adding people to the group as we went along the way, and picking up and moving as a group a few times. I went from Chicago to Denver to Cleveland, Tennessee, right outside of Chattanooga, to York, Pennsylvania, to Chicago once more, then to Portland, Oregon. While I was in Portland, I was working at a wood-fired pizza place and working crazy hours. And when I felt that I was kind of burning out on that after about five and a half years, I started kind of looking around for what I might want to do. Instead, I had previously worked in tobacco shops in Chicago. I'd worked most notably at Yvonne Reeves, but I started with Blue Havana and managed that store for about 4 years, and then went on to work at La Casa del Tobacco in Wicker Park, Chicago, and then I got a job at Yvonne Reeves, worked there for about 2 years. So fast forward again, I'm in Portland and working crazy hours at the wood-fired pizza place, and was kind of feeling like I wanted to get back into the tobacco game. So I neither Cubs nor Sox. I am not a sports guy at all. So I was shopping a lot at smoking pipes. And decided on a kind of a whim to shoot them a email with a cover letter and resume. And I never expected to hear back because, David, you mentioned before that you and I are on the other side of the planet from one another. Well, Portland, Oregon and Langs, South Carolina are just about as far away from one another as you could possibly be within the United States. And I thought I'll never hear from them. And then they called me the very next day and said, hey, we'd like to set up a phone interview. And so did a phone interview. And at the end of that, they said, we'd like to fly you out for in-person interviews. So about a week later, I flew to South Carolina and did 3 days of pretty intensive interviews with a number of different people at Smoking Pipes and Laudisi Distribution Group. And at the end of that, they offered me a position in customer service. So basically, I'd be doing sales, pipes, pipe tobacco, and all the accessories that they sell on the website. And so I jumped at that. When I relocated to South Carolina a couple of months later, they told me, hey, we couldn't really tell you before when you were just a guy applying for a position, but now that you're part of the company, you should know that here in just a couple of months, we actually are going to be publicly announcing that Cornell and Diehl is going to be merged into Laudisi. And, I had been a huge Cornell and Diehl fan for a long time, and they basically made up 98% of what I regularly smoked and what's in my cellar. And so, they were like, hey, your favorite tobacco blending house is actually going to be a part of the company that you now work for. And you should just kind of tuck that information under your hat and think about it. There might be something, on down the line, an opportunity there. Well, about a year later, Sykes Wilford popped his head into my cubicle and was like, hey, Jeremy, you got a second? I'd like to talk to you. So I said, sure. And he said, okay, well, just back this way in this conference room. And I'm like, I do something wrong? Like, what's happening? And went back and sat down in the conference room, and Joshua Burgess, my manager, is there, and Sykes is there, and Chris Tarler from Cornell and Diehl are there. And Sykes just kind of paused for a couple of seconds, and they said, how would you feel about working at Cornell and Diehl? And I was through the roof. I was overjoyed. And so yeah, we got a furnished apartment in Morganton so that I could travel easily and kind of keep things there. And buy groceries and kind of have a home away from home experience. And I would work for 2 weeks at a time in customer service here in Langs. And then I would relocate for the next 2 weeks to Morganton and work alongside the head blender, Ted Connolly, and William Harbison and all the other folks at Cornell and Diehl, and just kind of learned the system, learned the way that it worked, and learned the way that that everything kind of operated and functioned. And at the end of about 6 months of 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, we relocated the entire plant to Langs, South Carolina, and that is where we are currently. So I think that kind of gives you a very brief. That's the Reader's Digest condensed version of how I went from where I was and came to be to where I am.
That's awesome. So then, did you immediately jump into a vision of becoming the head blender, or it was just like, I'm just spending day to day and seeing what I can learn?
Well, it was definitely important for me to just spend some time learning and understanding what the processes were. But the reason that the position was open at Cornell and Diehl was because the head blender, Ted Connolly, had decided that at the young age of 79 years old, he wanted to retire. And so he knew, you know, all of his growing up and all of his family and everything had happened there in Morganton, and he didn't want to relocate. He wanted to stop working and enjoy his retirement. And so that was the reason that there was a position available. So I knew going into it that I would be stepping into a position as head blender. But the way that things turned out was a little more involved and turned out to be an even bigger opportunity than just simply being a production blender at Cornell and Diehl. When it was time for us to actually relocate, everyone who was currently employed by Cornell and Diehl was offered the opportunity to relocate with the company, and they had a period of time to consider that. And they all, at the end of that time, decided that they did not want to relocate. They wanted to stay in the mountains in Morganton. And so it went from me being just a replacement for one guy to me being in a position where I needed to learn what everyone was doing so that I could then hire and train people to replace them when we relocated. So I really went from just being a guy working at Cornell and Diehl in a head blender capacity to being more of an overarching manager of the new iteration of the company.
Wow, that's a lot.
How many years have you been there, Jerry?
Say again?
How many years have you been at C&D now?
I've been there now nearly 6 years.
Very cool. What's been your biggest? I'm trying to think of something to like your biggest deal at Cornell and Diehl.
my biggest deal?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the right word. Like what have you done there that you're most proud of? That was the most exciting thing that you've done there?
I mean, there's a lot. The way that Cornell and Diehl was situated in the pipe tobacco market at the time of the merger was a little more out of the way, and I would say that while we had a strong following, that it was more of a cult following. We've been able to really grow the company and kind of take a look at the scalability of our processes, and we've really grown in staggering ways. Honestly, we've had about an 80% increase in the last 5 years. So yeah, I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of a lot of the products that we've been able to put out. I'm proud of the equipment refurbishing that I've gotten to be a part of, and the reimagining of how processes could be done and made more efficient to be able to still maintain a handcrafted product, but to be able to produce more yield. I've been involved from the beginning in sourcing the tobaccos that we use, and been able to actually get certification in USDA tobacco grading, so that I could really know what I was looking for and know what I was looking at, and make high quality leaf selection decisions. Yeah, there's any number of things. I'm really proud of my work on blends like Carolina Red Flake, and on SunBear and San Sepulcro. I'm really proud of the sort of new lines that we were able to add, like the Old Ones series, which pays homage to H.P. Lovecraft and his writings, which I've always been a big fan. So yeah, there's a lot that I feel very, very grateful and blessed to have been a part of.
That's awesome.
Hey, Jeremy.
Can I ask one question real quick?
Absolutely.
Speaking of SunBear, I hear you're working on another batch. When do you think that might be available?
Very, very soon. We have not yet announced an official date, but we are currently putting about the last 3,000 tins together in the next 2 or 3 days. So it will be just weeks from now. Very, very, very soon.
Thanks for asking that question, because that's one of the ones I missed, and I wanted to try that so bad. So I'm really glad to hear that it's coming more.
Yeah, we did 4,500 tins last year, and we could not have predicted how quickly those 4,500 tins disappeared. So we're doing 8,000 tins this year. So hopefully many of you who did not get a chance to try SunBear last time around will be able to get your hands on some this time around.
Sweet. Gustavo, man, I see your hand. Just go for it.
Hey, Jeremy, just real quick question. Gustavo from South Louisiana, bearing the heat down here.
Yeah.
But enjoying some Pegasus. So.
Awesome.
Can't go wrong with that. Quick question. What is usually your vision or your thought process when you wake up one day and you're like, you know what? I want to create a new blend. What do you strive for when you do that? Because something I like about Cornell and Diehl is that you guys have so many options in different blends and different leaves and different flavors that it's one of the reasons why my cellar is 90% Cornell and Diehl. So I just wanted to understand kind of like your thought process, because it seems like you guys do a lot of Virginias, which are awesome. Burleys, I used to hate Burleys until I tried Haunted Bookshop, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is. I was a little afraid at first, but once I tried it, I'm hooked.
Well, I have to say that each time that I create a new blend, or I'm working on designing a new product, it's not the same any time. It depends on what the project is. It depends on what the basis or the inspiration or the impetus for the project kind of came to be. There's times where it's just like, I just feel like coming up with something new, and I've got a flavor profile in mind already, and I'm not even really thinking about making a product. I'm thinking about just whipping up something for me to smoke. Other times we've been contacted by a distributor or a third-party brand that wants us to create a product for them, and so they may or may not have a certain idea in mind, like the Briarworks tobaccos. So Pete Pete Prevost and Todd Johnson approached us and said, you know, we want to add pipe tobacco to the Briarworks brand, and we really like you guys' flavor profiles, and the way that you work with your ingredients. We want you to put together a line of tobaccos for us. And they already had some kind of ideas about, like, they wanted a peach cobbler, they wanted a Virginia Perique that they wanted to call Back Down South. They wanted a All Day English, and they wanted to call it Pete's Beards Blend. And they wanted a sweet tea and an unsweet tea, and they wanted a cigar leaf blend. And their idea for that was to call it Country Lawyer. So they had ideas of what the blends basically were going to be in terms of genre, but they didn't have much more than that. So they gave me the broad strokes of what they wanted the lineup to be, and then I worked to make blends that fit what seemed to be their vision. And it took 2 or 3 rounds before we got peach cobbler the way that it needed to be, and it was pretty easy for me to put together Back Down South in a way that we all really liked. So each time that I'm making a new product, it really depends on what the reason for the project is, how I approach it. Sometimes I come across a blending component that's totally unique, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with this, but we need to do something. And so then that one component, using that one component, becomes the driving force in how the rest of the blend comes together. If it's something that I really want to showcase, or if it's something that I want to use to gently add some nuance to another style of blend, it all depends.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't too rambling. Yeah. Or
no, it was perfect. Just something that I find about Cornell and Diehl is, like I said, there's so many different blends, and sometimes it's something that I do with people that are starting to smoke a pipe. I usually don't give them my view of the blend. I let them try it themselves.
Sure.
Because we all have different palates. For example, one of the prime examples from Cornell and Diehl is Cross-Eyed Cricket. If you look on the internet, don't look on the internet if you want to try this blend.
You're right.
At first I was like, God, I don't want to try it. Finally did, and I bought 2 tins instead of 1. And I like it. There's just so many different flavors in that blend that unless you actually sit there and study it, you don't get them. So you can't just.
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of times when I read a review and somebody is like, "This is terrible," or whatever, that in and of itself is inspiration to me to go and buy a tin and try it, because I find a lot of times that the things that I personally like the most are things that are sort of marginalizing. Or can be things that are sort of acquired tastes. Like, I love Scotch whiskey.
Yeah.
And for me, absolutely. For me, the peatier and smokier, the better. Lafroig 10 is like my desert island. And I've had the 18, I've had the 25, but the 10 with its brash youth is just really wonderful to me. But a lot of people smell it, and that's as far as it's going to go. They don't want any more to do with anything that smells like, motor oil and Band-Aids and cigarette fingers. And to me, that's exactly what drew me to it. The first time I ever smelled Lafroig, I was like, that's a smell I understand. That's a freshly opened Band-Aid and cigarette fingers.
Yeah.
And it categorized that blend for me, or that whiskey for me, in a way that really kind of it's my favorite.
Yep.
So I find that I really enjoy things that are acquired taste, and when somebody says this is garbage, I want to try it for myself.
Yep.
Gary, if you ever find yourself in Scotland, look me up.
Okay.
I've been on I've been on Isla. I stay quite a distance from Isla, but I've been on the island a couple of times.
Oh, nice.
Through rugby connections, and I know guys, not in Lafroig certainly, but I know the works manager at Colila.
Oh man, I love Colila.
Yeah, and Brewer Clary as well. So
Yes.
if ever you find yourself this side of the pond, give me a shout.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. I also own my own little plot at Lafroig. You know how they sell like their little 1 foot by 1 foot plot. So someday I do want to make it to Scotland and visit my plot. So.
Phil's your hookup, man. He has extended us invitations of this nature. I think the closest one, Bart, is Bart here today? Bart, are you here? Did I not see you? So Bart's in the Netherlands, and Bart said, "Yeah, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump." So he's going to be sleeping on Phil's couch here in another week or so.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Phil. I appreciate that invitation.
Yeah, that's a genuine offer. If you find yourself in the country, give me a shout, and I'll.
I will certainly do that. Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy, quick question. Can you just tell a little bit about your collaboration with Warp Cigar? Your blends are very unique.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me. I am a big fan of Warped. I'm a big fan of Kyle Gellis and his approach to creating their blends and their cigars is kind of analogous to the way that C&D approaches our own pipe tobacco manufacturing. And so he met Shane Ireland at the I think it was still called IPCPR. They've changed the name of the trade show so many times now, but yeah. Kyle and Shane met, and after talking to Kyle for a little bit, Shane was just like, dude, you should really meet Jeremy. Like, you guys are cut from the same fabric in a lot of ways. And so we kind of got together, and Kyle was interested in getting into the pipe tobacco game and wanted us to design a brand for him. And you know, it's not very often that I get to work with somebody in that capacity where they also know a lot about tobacco too, that we could be more collaborative than just like, I want you to create this kind of a thing, and then I go off and put together the blend. And so with Kyle, it was really a lot more like showing him what different tobaccos we had available and how they could kind of be used together. And we sat down and smoked a number of different Cornell and Diehl products together so he could kind of get an idea for how Virginias could be used in combination with other things, or how Burleys could be used in combination with other things to design flavor profiles. And when he kind of, you know, began to dip his toe in the water with this, it was like a whole new ball game for him in terms of blending. And so he and I actually worked on and developed all of the Warped lineup together, making suggestions to one another, and well, let's try this, so let's try that, and so we kind of got to do some of that face to face, and then we've done more of it putting things together and sending samples back and forth to one another. So that's how all of those have come to be.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Warped cigars, and I know Warped cigars are made at Aganorsa factory, and they also had a joint project, like the Garden of the Farm Apollo, that was joint project, delicious Nicaragua Puro. And Terence Riley, who works at Aganorsa Leaf, I know him well, and his uncle, Manuel Quesada, good friend of mine. But I have a question to you as amateur tobacco blender to professional. I just want to share my blending process and compare notes with yours. I got into tobacco blending almost by accident. I was sitting here in my backyard, smoking Butera Pelican, which I liked. It's good tobacco, but not great. However, I really enjoyed the flavor of Oriental tobaccos in there. I had some granulated perique from Cornell and Diehl with me. I added it to Pelican, and I like the result better than original. I gave sample to Chris McGrath, who worked at Nat Sherman at that time. He liked it, and I said, let's blend something like this for Nat Sherman. It took us a few months. Finally, we made it, and it was sold at Nat Sherman as limited edition Nat Sherman 85th anniversary pipe blend. So when I'm blending something new, well, at first I try each component separately just to understand better what it will contribute to the blend. I smoked Latakia straight, I smoked Perique straight, and I actually enjoyed them. And usually I come up with an idea what kind of flavor I want in my tobacco, and then I make a few samples with the different proportions, and then select which one I like better and start adjusting it. Occasionally I get it right on the first or second time. Sometimes it takes a few months to get it right. Sometimes I never can make it quite right, so I just abandon it. How different it is from your creative process?
I don't think it sounds very different. I always smoke the components that I intend to use straight first for the exact same reason that you delineated, that you want to know what each component is going to contribute, and kind of try to decide how much or how little of each component I want to use. The things that I would say are maybe a little different are when I'm designing a blend from scratch, I'm not usually thinking in terms of like this existing blend, what can I add to it to make it what I want it to be. I'm working with all raw components and starting from the ground up. The first thing that I do is decide what two components are going to make up the largest majority of the overall blend, and I will play with the balance of those two components to get the base that I want. And then after I've got the balance between those that I want, then I start adding in the smaller ingredients, the spicing components. And so that's the way that I usually build a blend, unless it's going to be an aromatic. If I know from the get-go that it is going to either be an aromatic or that it's going to have some sort of topping, even if it's not a full-on fragrant aromatic, I will start with designing the sauce the way that I think I want it to smell, and then I will put together components that I think will play with those aromas and hopefully those flavors, and then I'll start working with how much sauce and whether or not I've got the components right to evoke what I want to evoke from one another. Because when you're using a sauce and tobacco, unless your goal is to use bad quality tobacco and to cover it over with the flavoring and make the flavoring the only experience the smoker has, you really want to have a flavoring that is crafted to work with the tobaccos, and tobaccos that are crafted to work with the flavoring, so that it becomes a unified experience instead of a monodimensional experience. So, but those are, what's that?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very helpful. I also find that it's usually pretty easy to get the general flavor the way I like it, but it's really hard to balance both flavor and the burn rate, because of course, if you use like bright Virginia or Orientals, they will burn much faster. If you want to slow it down, you can add some Latakia or like stock Virginia, it will slow down the burning. But I can get a flavor that I like usually on the first try, but to balance it so nothing is, no tobaccos overpower each other, they're in harmony, that usually takes most time for me.
I really recommend if you get on Amazon and you search for bullet making scale. This will be a really, really small electronic digital scale that will give you the ability to measure in hundredths and thousandths of a gram.
Yeah, I have the scale which I use all the time.
Yes.
Usually, like when I make my first sample, I make 16 gram of each variation. It's easy to transform to a pound later, to convert to a
Perfect.
pound. So I make 16 gram of each and smoke them all, then select which one I like better and start working with that.
Perfect. Yeah, it sounds like your approach is very similar to what I do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Todd. I want to piggyback on Gustavo's question.
Okay.
You mentioned it, the Carolina Red Flake. How did that happen? Tell me the story behind that.
Well, Carolina Red Flake happened by accident. I was actually going through some sampling of some different Red Virginia tobaccos because we were beginning to get to a point with our current stock of Red Virginia that we were using to need to source a replacement and begin to start adding some of the new grade in incrementally over time so that we could transition. So I was sitting down with I think I had 8, maybe 10 different leaf samples that I was sampling against what we were currently using to try and find something that was as close as possible in terms of sugar and nicotine, but also in terms of overall flavor, which a grade can't tell you. You really just have to smoke it. So one of the grades that I was sampling was L2DH015. And when I tasted it, I was blown away by the flavor of it, but it was not a good match for the Red Virginia that we were currently using. It was wildly different, but it was delicious. And so I knew, okay, well, I can't use it as a replacement grade for what we're currently using for our main production, but this is too good not to do something with. And so Carolina Red Flake started just me taking that 5-pound sample and what little I had smoked removed from it. I processed it like a flake and just packed it up for myself because I thought it was delicious. But at the end of its time pressing and being cut into a flake, I knew that we had to do something as a product with this. So I selected a small number of cases, and so we used those to make every year larger and larger batches of Carolina Red Flake. So that was really where that came from.
We had a question. Somebody wanted to know what pipe you use to sample your tobaccos with.
Sure. So I use a clay pipe to taste components. I have a clay pipe that I just smoke Latakia in, and it doesn't smoke anything else. And then I have 3 clay pipes that I will use after some time in the oven to clean them. I'll use to smoke whatever I might need to sample. But once I've established a basic flavor profile from the clay, which I think is the most accurate way to taste, then I also have a number of briar pipes that I use because most of our customers are going to be smoking these blends in briar, and then I also smoke in a corn cob. So once I've done the initial flavor tasting in a clay pipe, and I know the tobacco that I want to purchase, then whenever I'm working on blends, I smoke in a clay pipe, I smoke in several different briar pipes, and I smoke in a corncob pipe.
I don't know if you saw, I recently did a video. I experimented with that, trying the same tobacco in 6 different pipes. And I never
didn't see it.
But one of the thoughts that I didn't address was, what do you do when you find an anomaly? Like, okay, so this is working in a clay and it's working in a mirror, but crap, it's not going to work in a briar or something like that.
Well, I have never experienced something not working in a briar when it worked in other tobacco pipe, or in other pipe materials. I've had things that I didn't like as well in corncob, but if it doesn't work in a briar or it doesn't work in a clay, then that tells me that there's something off with the way that I've put the blend together, and I find that a minor variation or nudging one component up or down in percentage usually fixes that.
Well, also it might not work in that particular briar pipe. It might
That's
be
true,
engineering
too.
of the pipe. You change shape of the pipe, you change size of the pipe, from bend go to straight, or from straight to bend, and it might change it completely. There are certain tobaccos which taste much better in one pipe and they don't taste quite right in another, even though both pipes are briar.
That's right. Well, that's why I use a number of different briar pipes. And so if I'm getting something that doesn't work across 3 or 4 different briar pipes, that tells me that it's not the pipe, it's the tobacco.
That was kind of the question that I had from a commercial point of view. Like, if you're trying to come out with a blend that will have as broad an appeal as possible, that you've got to test it across several different kinds of smoking platforms.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
Back to the.
I'm sorry. I have a question for Jeremy. How many people trying the new tobacco before you sell the stuff?
So myself, typically our production manager, Matt Johnson. Oftentimes, I will go to people at smoking pipes. I always bring things to Shane for him to smoke. Shane and I are really good friends, and we can really kind of parse through what's good and what's bad in a blend together quite easily. Kaz Walters, who used to work in Smoking Pipes customer service and now works at LaDC Distribution Group. Sometimes I'll work with Joe Fabian, also of LaDC Distribution Group. Bring things to folks in customer service or in marketing or wherever.
So there's a bunch of people.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about working at a LaDC company is that you have so many different kinds of pipe smokers, so many different kind of flavor profiles that people enjoy, and you've got a lot of really knowledgeable pipe and pipe tobacco folks. So I have about 80 people to choose from that I can bring things to bounce ideas off of.
Well, okay. I think I can speak for the club when I say if you'd like to have a focus group, we would all volunteer to help you out with that.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah, I have my bunch of guinea pigs, guys at Nat Sherman Tobacco Store. And
oops, Dimitri, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. You're gonna have to unmute yourself there.
So at first, when I blend something new, I don't give it to anybody unless I like it myself. Then I give it to a few guys at Nat Sherman store who pipe smokers, give it to a couple of guys at New York Pipe Club, and if they like it, well, at first I always ask them what they don't like about that blend. What they like, it's not that important. I want to know what they don't like. Then I adjust it according to the feedback, give it back to them, and if finally I get something that I and few other people like it, then I make more of it, and for myself, for guys at New York Pipe Club, for guys at Philadelphia Pipe Club.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. I always blend to my taste first, and when it tastes good to me, then I start shopping it around to others to see what they find wrong with it.
That kind of answers my question, Jeremy, because I've always been thinking about the whole nicotine strength subject, because we all have different, what is that called?
Tolerance?
Yeah, tolerance. So I always wondered how you guys came up with the strength level of a particular blend, since, you know, yours might be different than mine. I have a very high tolerance, but if I give it to my brother, for example, if I let him smoke Haunted Bookshop, he'll knock him out. You know,
right.
That was always something that I always kind of thought about, how you guys came up with the strength level on the nicotine side, you know?
Right. It depends on the blend, and a lot of times when I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about a blend, I will think first about the flavor profile, and then about how strong, depending on that flavor profile, how strong the tobacco ought to be. And so I do try and take our nicotine content into account, not only when I'm sourcing blending components to use in all of our products, but also when I'm putting together a blend. I want to think about, if it's a very light, mellow kind of flavor, then it's not going to make sense for it to be wildly strong. But if it is a rich, dense, overt sort of flavor, then you really need the strength to have a balanced experience, and that strength will actually help the smoker to sort of moderate the way that they smoke, so that they don't overload their palate. If it's a very strong, very overt flavor, then having some strength there will allow them to slow down and really, you know, delve into the depth of that flavor.
That makes sense.
I got a question, if now's an appropriate time.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
My name's Adam. I'm from Anchorage, Alaska. And first I wanted to say, I'm at a point in my life where I really liked your story about, it goes to the, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. And you enjoy pipe smoking, so you just fire off a resume to a company, and now you do what you love. And I think it was a good thing for me to hear at this point in my life, where I think I need to find what I love and just start taking a couple of chances like that. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
My question has to do with the GLPs blends. I don't know if you really consider that to be a Cornell and Diehl product, but I'd say 50% of my cellar are GLPs blends, and I just love them. And I was just wondering, I know that Cornell and Diehl blends for GLPs, and I was just wondering if, do you consider that to be sort of a big part of the Cornell and Diehl business, generally speaking?
Absolutely.
And if you could just comment on that and tell us a little bit more about these GLPs blends and sort of how they play with Cornell and Diehl.
Sure. So Greg Pease founded GLPs in the year 2000. So this year is his 20th anniversary, or 20th anniversary of the GLPs brand. But he wanted someone to, because he's just one guy. So he wanted a company to produce his products, but he wanted to totally create the recipes. And so he approached Cornell and Diehl, and they came up with a business plan together back in 2000. And so Greg uses our blending components to put together his blend recipes, and then when he comes up with a recipe that he is happy with, then he sends that recipe to me and has me make a sample batch to compare against what he created, so that we can kind of make sure that we're approaching this the same way. And then we go from there. When we've got something that he and myself and a few others are happy with, then we move forward into other production areas. But all of the GLPs line up. They're things that Cornell and Diehl produces, but they are not Cornell and Diehl blends. They are blends that belong to Greg.
Great, thank you very much. I know when like McClelland went out of business and Dunhill was going to go out of business, and people are like, freaking out. But I was like, no way. Between Cornell and Diehl and GLPs, I mean, we're covered with the best blends that you can find. So, I mean, it's not a problem at all. So anyway, thanks for answering my question, and thanks for making such delicious blends. I enjoy them every single day.
Wow, thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
This probably goes with along the same story there. I enjoy the collaboration that you have with Savinelli for their 140th anniversary blend. And I was just wondering, is that something that's going to continue on a yearly basis, or is it done?
No, I think we will probably continue to make it. That blend was really, really a challenge to me to put together the flavors the way that I could imagine them in my head. And it was a labor of several months to try and get the balance right, and to incorporate the lavender and the dark fired and the Virginias and the Oriental and the honey and the citrus aspect, getting all those things in the proper proportions and balanced the way that I wanted them to be. Was a lot of fun for me, and it was a way to pay homage to classically Italian flavors, things that were essentially Italian, to celebrate their 140th. And so, yeah, I think that we'll continue to do this every year.
Well, thank you. I'm glad, because I enjoy it, and you do a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It was fun.
I totally agree with that. And actually, I might get some hate for this, but I think that GOP's Quiet Nights is a much better blend than the Penzance. I'm sorry to say that, but I've had both. Maybe it's just my palate, but
there are definitely a lot of people out there that agree with you.
Yeah. I'm more of a Margate guy, but out of the Penzance and the Quiet Nights, by far is a much better blend, in my opinion.
Well, that's why there are so many different blends, because different people like different things. I don't like aromatics. It doesn't mean they are bad. They're just not the right tobaccos for me. I have a lot of my friends, pipe smokers, who hate Latakia. They cannot stand Latakia. I love Latakia. I can smoke it non-stop.
Yep.
I got a couple questions, if you guys don't mind. And David, I can ask the three in a row, or I can ask one at a time and then move on later to let more people ask. But one of them is, Jeremy, you and me met in Columbus.
Yes.
And if you remember, you gave me the trial of the SunBear. Sorry, I came an hour late. If you guys already talk about this, please move on.
Go for it, man. Just go for it.
I know you talk about your honey and everything. Are you guys going to make more sunburn? Because seriously, this is the best blend I ever tried in the last 5 years.
I talked about it earlier, but I'm happy to tell you about it again. Here in just a few short weeks, we'll have about 8,000 tens of SunBear.
Thank you.
So yeah, keep your
perfect. That's fine. And then the other, and thank you sorry for asking, and thank you. The second one, it's like Adam asked you about GLPs, and I love them as well as you guys. Do you and GLPs kind of make their own blend, either under Cornell and Diehl or under GLPs that is made by you two guys combined? Like, for example, I know you guys have Sunday Picnic or Regent's Flake that are kind of alike, at least in my opinion. have you done that in the past, or are you planning to do that?
No, at this point, Greg and I have not collaborated the way that, say, like Kyle Gellis and I have collaborated. But whenever Greg is working on a new blend, he and I definitely smoke together and we'll talk about the blend, and he'll ask me my thoughts and my feedback, and so it usually involves a few rounds back and forth of samples to one another in the development of it. Ultimately, his choice, you know, it's his brand. We'll make whatever he wants us to make.
Mm-hmm.
But he does seek my opinion and seek the opinions of others at Laudisi. So yeah, in that way there is, I wouldn't call it collaboration, but there is certainly a dialogue.
It's more like, I know he collaborated with McClellan before, so I don't know if you two can make one that is, I don't know, the Cornell and Peace, or the Peace and Diehl, or something like that you guys give it a name.
Yeah, it's something that may happen at some point, but at this point we've not done that.
I was going to throw in there on David's question and the other person who asked about SunBear, that I had asked Jeremy if he would step outside and show us his bees.
I was just about to actually do that, David.
That's so awesome. So you guys want to see the beehive?
Yes, absolutely. Cool. So step outside.
Oh, I have another. Jeremy, I have another question for you. The Lonely Island question. What pipe and tobacco would you take with you on the Lonely Island, and why?
That's a tough one.
I know.
My job is to basically smoke everything that Cornell and Diehl makes to the point that I am familiar with it, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for smoking for pleasure for me. So I would really.
You notice he hasn't lit up this whole time. It's like,
oh no, I was smoking before.
Oh, you're.
I was smoking earlier, but I did set the pipe down. I love Virginia Periques. I love straight Virginias. It would be either Speakeasy probably, or Carolina Red Flake would be my daily go-to if I didn't also have work smoking.
How about Pegasus? Because I know you love Pegasus too. I was guessing that one.
I do love Pegasus. But I think Virginias or Virginia Periques are really, if I was pressed to only smoke one thing for the rest of my life, it would be something in that category.
Okay.
So real quick, I'm going to turn the phone around so that I can kind of show you guys a little bit of my surroundings here. I won't be able to see you all, but you'll be able to see some of it's our pepper garden. Back there are chickens and our ducks. And kind of the dying end of our midsummer garden, we've got to till all this up and start over. Here are our 3 beehives.
I just got to say, you're a blessed man. That looks like a nice place.
I am a blessed man. It is really pretty wonderful.
So just to clarify, you only use honey from these hives to make SunBear. Is that right?
That is not quite true. We use a good portion of our honey, but we do not have, at this point, we do not have quite the honey production yet to be able to make an 8,010 batch just from my hives. So we'll work to that, but we do use a significant portion of our honey from this lot of bees.
So do you think that changes the flavor profile when you mix honey from a different hive?
It does. It certainly does. But I also have tried to find, local South Carolina honey that flavor profile actually matches pretty well to the flavor of the honey from our bees.
Yeah. Well, overall, taste of honey is very different depending on what region it's from, and even more important, what flowers it's from.
That's right.
Like buckwheat honey is totally different from clover honey. It's totally different from linden honey, and so on.
Yes, I agree with you. And as you can see, we have a lot of different kinds of plants growing. We've got all these tomatoes, and our bees are all over all of these and all of these cucumbers. And we've got all of this forest area behind us. So our bees get a very, very unique diet. So like I say, I have sampled different kinds of honey to try and find something that was very similar, very comparable to the flavor profile of the honey that our bees produce.
So are you gonna make a tomato pepper bee honey blend?
No plans to do so. Tobacco and peppers and tomatoes are related, so that's not quite as wild an idea as it may first seem. They're all part of the deadly nightshade family.
Can I make just one suggestion, please? I know
Sure,
you have the Burley 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Since you allow me to taste the SunBear 3 and 4, can you make SunBear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, please? At least for me.
Okay, I'll try to work that in.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy, this is a question, kind of not super businessy, but I'm sure that you've heard of Matches 860.
Yes.
He was a huge fan of Haunted Bookshop and Pirate Cake, and he came up with a little blend called Haunted Pirate Ship.
Yes.
Did you guys ever think about maybe putting out something like that for Halloween or around those times?
Well, we did not. I did not know Matches or even know of Matches, unfortunately, until after his passing. I've watched a number of his videos, and I definitely recognize the passion that he had for Haunted Bookshop and for other blends that we made. And I know that a lot of people really kind of came to checking out Cornell and Diehl because of his tutelage. And I deeply appreciate that, and Cornell and Diehl does as well. But the difficulty comes in that we didn't have a relationship with him. And the last thing that I or Cornell and Diehl at all would want to do is to profit on him. And we haven't found a good way to really, create an homage to him that isn't in some way kind of disingenuous.
Right, I totally understand.
Because we didn't know him, and yeah, like I say, I am grateful for what he contributed to pipe smoking. I'm grateful for the ways that he was a brand ambassador for us, and what he meant to so many people on the YouTube pipe community. But we haven't wanted to delve in that way, because it doesn't seem like a very respectful thing to him for us to profit on his idea.
Have you ever thought about coming up with the recipe that you simply publish for everybody else to put something together? That way,
that's certainly something that we would be open to. yeah, it'd really be a matter of me putting together the idea and finding whether or not we thought that it would have broader appeal.
I know his daughter has made, extended her gratitude towards the YouTube pipe community and broadly. She'd probably be somebody who would be very open to talking about that.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, she's
not wanting to speak for her, but
Sure. Well, maybe we could talk, or you could shoot me an email with some sort of contact information for her. She's never approached us.
I think it's probably maybe a little too soon for her.
Sure.
The whole thing earlier this year, and then this whole COVID. Oh, can't say that word. Sorry, or on YouTube. With that thing, I'm sure it's just not something that she's jumping into. But I got about a pound of that haunted pirate ship.
Really?
Just blending together there in my cellar until Halloween. So it's really good. It's really good.
Nice. Awesome.
I have a question for you. Jeremy.
Go ahead. I'll jump in next.
Just what do you think is your most controversial blend?
Controversial.
Yeah, like several people have said, people have different palates, and something that has had sort of division amongst the pipe smoking community.
Sure. Crooner is pretty divisive. People either love it or hate it. Captain Bob's, a Latakia blend with a bunch of dark burley and with a grape topping. That is a pretty unique flavor profile that people either cotton to or do not cotton to. Controversial. I'm going to stick with those two as my answer, but I'm sure that there are guys in the group who may have their own views.
Old Grove.
Old Grove. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Cross-eyed cricket, trust me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But the thing is, with Cornell and Diehl, you guys there are tobaccos that I've never even had yet.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have, things that I didn't even know you guys made until I go to your website directly, or I go to maybe like smokypipes.com, and I'm like, what is that? Never seen that before, and it's been out for a while,
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's probably one of the issues with, for example, cross-eyed cricket. Not a lot of people have had it, and the people that have had it only smoke it once, and they're like, oh no, it's this, it's that, don't try it. But I think if you give it a chance, you can develop a taste for it.
Josh, Go ahead and jump in, man.
Well, so going back to the haunted bookshop question, because I know it's probably not unique to have the heavy Latakia. And so I've mixed up some haunted pirate ship for myself to try. And Ken Byron, who does some blending, has a blend called Notorious, which to me is a very close match to haunted pirate ship. So my question for you is, and you mentioned one with a grape topping, but what burley Latakia, heavy Latakia blends do you have that might already be in production that would be comparable to that?
Well, there are a few that might have some comparison value. London Squire. The Old Joe Krantz Red Label. That would probably be the heaviest burley Latakia blend. That or Big and Burley would be our sturdiest, strongest burley blend with Latakia and Brique.
Hey, Jeremy, I've got two quick questions for you. Well, one's quick. One will take a little more explaining.
Sure.
Is there any topping? Is there any casing at all on Carolina Red Flake?
There's not. Neither casing nor topping.
Okay. So I started out with aromatics. I generally eschew aromatics today. I kind of avoid them. So Seattle Pipe Club Plum Pudding Bourbon Barrel Aged is listed as a Balkan. Salty Dogs Virginia Perique is listed as a, Virginia Perique. Pembroke is listed as in English, that's Margate with cognac topping. None of them are listed as aromatics. Now, Frogmorton Cellar was listed as an aromatic with a whiskey flavoring. Sutliff Ready Rubbed is, so some of these with a flavoring are not listed as aromatics, whereas some are flavored and listed as aromatics. Where's the line?
Well, that is something that I think that there's no hard and fast line, and so different companies have sort of defined their own way. My own personal view, and the view that Cornell and Diehl holds for our own products, is that it is possible for something to be flavored without it coming through in the room note. And when your room note is impacted by the flavor, you have just created what we would consider an aromatic. But there are ways to add flavoring that do not create a aromatic experience to those around you who are not smoking. And casing is something that is nearly ubiquitous in not just pipe tobacco, but nearly ubiquitous in all tobacco products you can think of. We actually are unique in that we produce a number of tobaccos that have no casing whatsoever on them, but most pipe tobacco, the vast majority of cigarettes, the vast majority of chewing tobacco, casing is almost 100% of the time used on tobacco products. And casing does not make an aromatic. If casing has been applied, the purpose for it is actually to address chemical aspects of the leaf and the way that the smoker experiences that leaf because of body chemistry. And so a casing is really applied not to overtly change the aroma or the flavor profile of a tobacco, but rather to smooth out rough edges, and to affect things like mouthfeel. So using a casing, if it's truly a casing, should not make an aromatic product. And you can add flavorings like molasses or honey, or adding whiskey. That's not going to come through in the aroma of the smoke. And really adding alcohol in general, since you're probably dealing with something that's 40% or more alcohol, you want that alcohol to flash off before it ever gets to the smoker, because if you've still got intact alcohol on the tobacco, that's going to lead to a very, very hot burning tobacco and could damage the person's pipe. So if you're adding whiskey and then you're letting all the tobacco flash off, you've lost 40% of what you added. And what remains really is a pretty mellow and inobtrusive flavor that is a little bit of sweetness and the flavor impartation of the wood from the barrel. So I wouldn't consider adding whiskey or cognac or anything like that having made an aromatic, because the impact is going to be very, very slight on the flavor, and it's not going to impact the aroma of the tobacco when it's burning at all.
So the casing is.
Phil here, just a quick question on that particular topic of whiskies. Obviously, as a lover of Islay malts, have you experimented at all with you know, a peaty whiskey malt topping?
Sure, absolutely. I made a blend called Vieux Carré, and Vieux Carré is a Latakia mixture with a very, very nice forward balance of Oriental and Virginia, and a more moderate a quantity of Latakia. And I specifically made Vieux Carré to kind of evoke some of the flavors that I get most readily from my favorites, Islay single malts, and then to kind of incorporate that into the blend. I also cased the whole blend before it goes into the press with a small amount of a blended Islay malt.
Okay.
So yeah, I would recommend trying Vieux Carré if you're interested in seeing kind of what I felt like was a perfect companion piece to a nice dram of Islay single malt.
That's great. That's a problem for us in the UK, because there's only one distributor that I can find of your tobaccos in the UK, and they only sell in bulk. So I've got to spend like $200-300 to get anything at all. So I'd be very interested to see if there was any plans to, you know, for us smokers in the UK or Europe generally for your stuff to be more available.
That would be really wonderful. What unfortunately has been a difficulty in us getting European distribution is that every country in the EU has their own very specific hoops that they want you to jump through in terms of packaging.
Yeah.
And so having European distribution becomes really, really difficult when you've got to have Italian warning labels and the other languages that Italy wants their warning labels available in the specific font that they want you to use, and the specific percentage of the label that they want you to use versus what England wants you to do and what Ireland wants you to do and what Scotland wants you to do, and on and on and on and on. Suddenly you're talking about literally having to have 50 or 75 different labels per product.
This was a
workable.
concern that we had Per Jensen as our guest speaker a few weeks ago, and he brought up the same concern that they wind up losing so much of their profit margin because of those kinds of and also that the way that the well, even here in the U.S. is legally defining an aromatic or added ingredients, so that, you know, what is defined as an aromatic may eventually be outlawed because they just won't allow the toppings.
That's right.
Gentlemen, I just want to keep us aware of the time. We still got plenty of time. I'm not chasing anybody out, but also, like, I'm enjoying the hell out of having Jeremy here. So if any of you don't mind going a little bit over, and if Jeremy isn't rushing off, we'll just keep going until my wife comes out and signals me that it's time to turn off the machines.
Sure.
Sounds great.
Well, I may have that same experience happen here. We've got a waning daylight and things that we must do around our home soon, guys. So yeah, that there may come some point where Hillary pops her head out and she's like, "Get the hell out of there."
Yes, we all know who's in charge, really, Jeremy.
Yes, oh,
we
absolutely.
all know who's
There's
in
no
charge.
question.
And that's global.
I have a few more questions if I could take the time, please.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
You recently published a video about Cavendish.
Yes.
And the Dominican Cavendish really intrigued me. Is that ever available in small batches, or is it too?
We actually offer the Dominican Black Cavendish in bulk.
Oh, I didn't happen to see it on smoking pipes.
The Black Cavendish that we sell in bulk is the Dominican Black Cavendish.
Okay, that's good to know. Would that be good to use to tame down a heavy fruit like Bayou?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Is your the Dominican Black Cavendish does it have topping?
It does not have a topping, no.
Okay, so that's great. And I want to add to subject of controversial blends. This is like my most unusual blend, Shahnameh, made from all whole leaf tobacco. It has Moldovan semi-oriental, Turkish Samsun, Turkish Izmir, and Indonesian Sumatra. It's still work in progress. I still didn't get it quite to my satisfaction. I'm thinking about maybe substituting Sumatra with a Bizuki leaf, because Bizuki has unique flavor. It's somewhat similar to Perique, has that pungent aroma like of fermented tobacco, so that might make it more balanced, or maybe I even add some Latakia to this. But that's kind of like non-standard blend. I know usually most pipe tobacco blends with a cigar leaf are Virginia-based. I didn't use any Virginia, just different Orientals and cigar tobacco. And I added some, well, it's not casein. I just sprayed it with a 0.5% solution of calcium propionate as antifungal.
I am hoping that we find a solution to the pandemic such that we can all show up at a pipe show next year, and we can get Dimitri's special blends and maybe Jeremy, I'm assuming that you'll be sent out there as well, and maybe we can see some of your works in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
We're all going to wear the same clothes so that you can identify us. We're.
I still had a couple of questions before Dimitri jumped in.
Yeah, go for it.
As I mentioned earlier, it's very hot and humid here today. When it's cooler, much cooler, I smoke a lot of stuff from Burley's to Lakeland blends, but I still haven't found my hot and humid blend yet. What would you suggest from your batches?
For me, I really like SunBear for the summers. It was really designed to be a blend that I could enjoy smoking in the South Carolina heat and humidity. And I think that blend holds up really well, not only in terms of being a pleasurable thing to smoke in summer, but it is also, for me, very, very evocative of the smells and flavors that mean summer to me personally. And I hope that others have that same experience. But it was really put together to be a summer blend, which there are not many pipe tobaccos that I think of as being particularly suited to summer.
Okay, sounds good. Lastly, I just acquired a couple of tins of Sansaproco and
Yes.
Carolina Red. What was the date on the first batch of Carolina Red?
I can't remember what the first true date was, but we released it in October of 2016.
Okay, my tin is from October of 2017. That's good. And what about Sansepolcro?
Sansepolcro, the first time we released, I believe, in April of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
All right, thanks for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Jeremy, how long?
Question based on the, with the whole FDA regulation, and I'm not going to enter that, but let's say you guys have 150 to 100 different blends. Let's say 100 of them are after 2007-8. If you guys cannot afford paying all the ones to the FDA, do you have a selection of ones that you want to keep and maybe pay for these ones instead getting rid of all of them based on either which ones are more famous, which ones sell best, or which ones are your favorites? Thank you.
Well, no, our intention is to keep everything that we currently produce on the market.
Love that answer.
Yes.
Perfect. Good answer. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, the FDA regulations are no doubt they're very invasive, but they have provided manufacturers with pathways that we can navigate to be able to keep blends on the market, and so without getting into all of the gory details and all of the boring regulatory humdrum, suffice to say that there are paths in place for manufacturers to be able to continue producing all of the blends that they make, and we are navigating those pathways.
Thank you. Because I was thinking either that's one of the reasons why, if you have to choose or not, and then the second one is the fact that you guys pretty much selling on smoking pipes all the time online. If they are gonna be like more difficult about buying online, or I don't know, banning like you guys selling online, and that's gonna affect you guys a lot, or what's gonna be the next way for you guys to sell?
Right. Well, at this point, there does not seem to be. Oh wow! A dragonfly literally just flew up and landed right on my thumb. That is so cool. There does not seem to be. There does not seem to be any end in sight right now to our ability to sell online, and there does not seem to be significant support for banning online sales of premium cigars and pipe tobacco at this point. It's something that has been brought up year after year after year in Congress, and the Senate has shot it down. And so at this point, we don't anticipate that being an issue.
I mean, I don't see how they could really, how they could possibly do something like that with the online sales, especially in a state, for example, like Florida, where I used to live, where the taxing on tobacco locally is like 80%.
Right. When you start talking about tobacco bans, what really needs to be considered is that the government makes a significant chunk of money off of tobacco sales, and that's part of their budget. That's part of their state and local budget. And if they turn around and ban it, they're really saying no to money that they then have to also figure out where else they're going to get it from. And quite frankly, smokers make up a relatively small percentage, and we don't have a whole lot of political power. So, that's why it's really easy to just tack on a tax on tobacco that you couldn't tack on to, say, alcohol in the same way, because 90% of the population drinks.
So, Jeremy, just a quick question. How was that decision-making process when you guys decided to start making like the Old Joe Krantz red and blue? Since you have a lot of followers of the original Old Joe Krantz, did you get a lot of negative feedback on that when you guys started doing it?
No, with the different iterations of Old Joe Krantz, I basically wanted to produce some variations on that particular blend as a theme. And so Old Joe Krantz Red Label is a very, very reverent reinterpretation of original Old Joe Krantz, but with the addition of Latakia. Old Joe Krantz White Label is Old Joe Krantz turned down a notch or two. I feel like Old Joe is a very, very rich, very, very heavy burley blend, and it's not everybody's cuppa. And so the White Label was basically, okay, well, here's a more approachable version of Old Joe Krantz. So I kept the flavor profile fairly similar. I just toned it down with the components that I chose and with the balance of them. Old Joe Krantz Blue Label, I wanted to create a more white burley profile as opposed to a dark burley profile. So the red Virginia I swapped out for bright Virginia, and the dark burley I swapped out for white burley, and added a small amount of black Cavendish to offer some smoothness, and to counteract some of the stringency that white burley can have on its own, particularly in large quantities. So that was kind of the inspiration for those, was to take Old Joe Krantz as a theme and then play with the flavor profile as a concept.
That sounds similar to the conversation I had with my wife when I started getting 5 tins of each one. And she's like, wait a minute, don't you already have like 10 tins of Old Joe Krantz? I'm like, no, but this is blue. This is
they're very different blends.
Yeah, they're not the same.
Right.
Yeah,
So there's a couple of questions that came through in the chat. Todd, and I am also very curious about this, and we haven't talked about it, and that's the whole concept behind the small batch idea. Like, I think that sounded to me like a sort of pet project of yours that that you brought forward. And could you talk a little bit about the concept and then where it's going? And
Sure. So small batch really was a way to kind of market and showcase the way that Cornell and Diehl already does everything that we make, because in truth, we are a small batch production plant. You know, where a larger company is thinking in terms of many thousands of pounds at a time of one particular blend, we're making in quantities as small as 5 or 6 pounds and as large as 1,000 pounds. Really, anywhere in that range is tiny by comparison to most pipe tobacco manufacturers, and certainly compared to much larger tobacco manufacturers than us, whether you're talking about pipe or otherwise. So our average batch size is about 85 pounds. And so we wanted to find some way to kind of offer products that would be limited in quantity, that would provide us with an opportunity to be creative and to kind of flex some creative muscle that we didn't always have the opportunity to do in our regular production, but that would also showcase in the way that we marketed them the fact that everything we do as a company is manufactured in small batches. So that was kind of the impetus for that idea. The small batch projects were ways for me to be creative with the kind of blends that we produced, and to use specialty ingredients that we didn't have large quantities of, but to also kind of have an ongoing messaging and dialogue about the simple fact that everything we do is a small batch sort of production line.
anything that you can talk about that's coming our way?
Well, So SunBear will be shortly forthcoming here in just a few weeks. We'll likely be doing another round of Carolina Red Flake. So we did Carolina Red Flake with the 18-year-old Perique earlier this year, and we'll be doing another round of Carolina Red Flake, the original blend, probably later on this year. Other than that, right now, I don't know that there's anything truly small batch. I did mention earlier that this year marks the GLP's 20th anniversary. I can't give anybody any details at this point, but suffice to say, think about the fact that it's Greg's 20th anniversary for his company, and yeah, there's some cool things coming down the line for that. So keep your ears to the ground and your eyes peeled.
I have one other question that I promised one of the members of the group who couldn't make it today to ask you, and that is what your thoughts are on tin baking, which I don't know anything about. Tin baking.
Tin baking?
Yeah.
Well, my thoughts are that if you are being if you're being intentional about it, if you have done some experiments to find the temperature that you want to use, and you're thinking about it in terms of, you know, setting a timer and not baking past a certain point, then you'll probably with a few experiments find a flavor profile and a result that you're very happy with. We do some tin baking of some of our blends before they are released, and at specific temperatures and for specific time frames. But if you are putting your tin on the hood of your car on a sunny day or on the dashboard and leaving it for some undetermined period of time, then you may or may not have very good results.
Gotcha.
I got one question. Are you guys planning on doing any cob-only blends?
Any what?
Cob. Blends that are designed to smoke in a corn cob.
No, probably not. We've never considered releasing blends that were specifically designed for the corn cob. I think most people have a corn cob or two in their rotation, but I don't think that there are as many pipe smokers that only smoke in a corn cob. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but it's never been something that we've thought too deeply about actually doing.
Because I do know that Rasulette had done a couple of blends were cob-only blends.
Okay.
Maybe you want to talk to him and see what he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for that suggestion. I actually was just on a similar thing to this yesterday with Russ, and he and I, if the Richmond Pipe Show does end up happening, he and I will be teaching a blending class together at Richmond. So I'll have many opportunities between now and then to have some dialogue with Russ. So I'll be sure and ask him how he approached that. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay,
Hey, Jeremy, I really like that.
Go for it, Tom.
20th anniversary flake. That was some good stuff. How rare is 18-year-old Perique, and where did you guys come up with that?
Rare as hen's teeth. We found that through Mark Ryan. When Mark purchased the Poche Farms Perique production facility, he found 3 barrels that were from 2002 hidden in a back corner and actually walled off that they forgot about in the inventory of everything that he purchased. The previous owners just had forgotten about these barrels, and they'd actually been built into a wall, and were totally hidden. And he was in the process of, I think, reconfiguring, and found these barrels back there, and they were dated from 2002.
Wow.
And so that's where those came from.
See, I'm waiting for an Indiana Jones movie to come out where they find in Syria, right? They find 6 tons of Latakia from, 1950.
Right, but you need to have the statue, and you need to be able to exactly match the weight of the statue to lift it off of the trap door, or else you're going to get run over by this big boulder. Yeah, it's going to be very dangerous, this tobacco archaeology
Todd,
project.
you're in good shape. We're going to send you over there to be our runner there.
Oh, good.
I'm glad
Yeah,
I asked
'cause
the question. That's an amazing story about the Perique, though. That's
I was fortunate enough to get some of that Perique, Decade Series Perique, and I made one of my blends, limited edition summertime, using that Decade Series Perique from Dotted and Ryan. And I have one last question about your tobaccos, about your Virginia specifically. Where are they coming from? Where are they grown?
Sure. Our red Virginias, we have three different red Virginia grades, and they all come from North Carolina. And then we have one bright Virginia grade that we use from Canada.
Oh, thank you very much. I also use some Canadian Virginia. I find it a little milder. It has some nice, like, fruity, citrusy flavor, which I find very pleasant, and it actually balances a lot of blends very well.
I agree. The Canadian stuff is just really, really beautiful and brilliant. It's in my opinion far better than much of the lemon Virginia that is produced in the States these days. But I still think that the United States makes the best red Virginia in the world.
I agree, and also I find that North American Virginias are very different from African Virginias. All of them, when properly aged, have sweetness and kind of fruity flavor, but American Virginias are more fruity, and African tend to be more like honey sweetness or caramel sweetness.
Yes, I agree.
So, fellas, I'm going to start winding us down here. I have 2 questions that I want to ask. One at the very, very end there, but I want to make sure that we get everybody else's questions answered since we're so fortunate to have Jeremy here. Yeah, Nick, go right ahead. By the way, Nick, the beard is happening, bro.
Dude, it looks good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, haven't had to cut it off yet, but masks are definitely a struggle on the daily basis.
Yeah, that's why I cut mine, Nick.
Yeah. So a quick couple of things. Just one, thank you for SunBear. I'm looking forward to the next batch. That was kind of my introduction to Virginia and Oriental mixes. So that was a great
awesome
introduction.
Wow, thank you.
I have just one question. It's a small batch question. Any plans on bringing back the Beast?
That's been one that we have kind of struggled with whether or not to bring back, Nick, and the reason is because it's kind of a bear to make.
Yeah.
We are currently in a little bit of a situation where we have found Perique difficult to keep on hand in the quantities that we need, and so as a result, we've had to take a hard look at how we're using Perique to make certain things. We've basically stopped offering Perique in bulk because to do so would mean that we didn't have guaranteed enough Perique on hand at any given time to make the blends that we really need to be able to make that use large quantities of it. And setting aside a large quantity of Perique specifically to make the Beast would also preclude us from being able to make some of the regular production items that we need to be able to make right now. And then on top of that, the production of actually soaking it in rum for 7 days means that we've got, you know, many tubs of tobacco that are taking up a large portion of space in our warehouse, just soaking for 7 days. And then we've got to lay it all out in a drying facility to air dry slowly. And that takes up a lot of room that we would like to be able to use for other things that just need some air time before it's ready to go into packaging. So the Beast is really one that we would love to offer again, but it creates a real traffic jam.
Nick is volunteering his garage for that purpose. So just
there's not much room in there, but sure, you're welcome.
All right, yeah, and then of course we've got to drive everything down to Arizona.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
I had a conversation with GLP's, I don't know, Greg, about a couple months ago in regards, same thing you're talking about Perique now, but with Latakia.
Yes.
Not being like coming into the States as much as it used to come from Cyprus, and only allowing him to perhaps creating blends that don't have more than 30% of Latakia itself. Are you guys having the same situation?
With Latakia now, no, we have not had that difficulty in a little over a year. We still are always kind of keeping our eye on the availability of Latakia. You know, every component, every tobacco component that we use, it's important to realize that if it were not for cigarettes, no tobacco farmer would be growing tobacco. Pipe tobacco is not a specific kind of tobacco. Pipe tobacco is processed specific ways to produce tobacco that is going to be pleasurable to smoke in a pipe. But the best quality tobacco that is available is tobacco that is resultant from crops that were commissioned by big cigarette companies. And if it were not for cigarette companies that had the capital to be able to commission many millions of pounds of tobacco every year, nobody would be able to get their hands on tobacco of any grade or variety. And with Latakia is no longer used in any cigarette that is currently manufactured anywhere in the world. And that's been that way for a long time. And so what that means is that Latakia is really the only tobacco that I can think of that only gets used in a pipe.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the same thing, like, for example, with, I live here in Kentucky, but 12, 13 years ago when I came here, like where my wife is from, you can see farms and farms and farms of barley all year long.
Mm-hmm.
The last couple, 5, 6 years ago I visited, it's all soybean. There's no more tobacco around here in a lot of places, and kind of sad.
Yes. Yeah, the American barley crop is smaller and smaller every year. The American dark-fired crop, which barley and dark-fired is really what's being grown around you in Kentucky there. It's smaller and smaller every year, but they still are producing many millions of pounds of barley in Kentucky and many millions of pounds of dark-fired. There's only about 60,000 pounds total made annually of Latakia every year. And that really is such a small number that they are having more and more difficulty finding farmers for whom it is worth their time, because they would much rather grow a big field than they would spend a lot of time. And, you know, whether you get a large crop or a small crop, tobacco is a labor-intensive product to grow and to cure. And so a farmer would much rather have a large crop to focus all of his time on than he would have a small crop that really requires the same amount of labor. So Latakia is there's less of it every year, it seems. But at this point, we're still able to get and keep the quantities on hand that we want. We did have a bit of a shortage, a bit of a scare with it a couple of years ago, but that's been readdressed, and we've got farmers that are again producing, and so yeah, I think Latakia is going to be okay, but we definitely are always keeping our eye on the availability of Latakia and Perique, because these are products that really don't get used in many other products besides pipe tobacco.
I'm gonna wind us down here, fellas, if that's okay. And if you still have some questions, like I said, I'm going to put this up on YouTube and put it up on the on our club page on Facebook. So go ahead and throw your afterthoughts about that up on those pages, and we can get those to Jeremy maybe, and if he's got a couple extra minutes, he can answer those for us.
Sure.
My last question is, because you guys are at Lodizi and whatnot are having these big anniversaries this year, would you return with Shane, maybe have the two of you on to talk about, you know, the two sort of sides of smoking pipes and Cornell and Diehl and whatnot, to sort of give us a whole anniversary edition of the Virtual Pipe Club?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I'm sure Shane would be too. I don't want to exactly speak for him, but I have a feeling that he'll say yes to this.
That'd be so awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen,
Thank you,
should we call it a day?
This is great, David. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
My chicken's done, so I'm good.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting, very educational.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jeremy. And you guys have a safe weekend, and I will see you next week. Oh, by the way, don't forget that John David Cole is going to be here next weekend as our guest speaker. So some real down-home Southern hospitality from John David as well.
Man,
and,
he is such a great guy.
He is so mellow. I just love him.
Yeah.
Super.
Tobacco Jesus.
The tobacco Jesus. That's fantastic. All right.
Thanks, Jeremy.
See you guys next week. Be well.
Thank you. Cheers.